All right, I think we're about ready to go. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar, Restaurant Insurance 2.0, Addressing the Evolving Needs of Today's Modern Restaurants. My name is Richie Venner, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Distinguished Programs. I'm very excited to be leading a discussion today with members of our restaurant program. We pride ourselves on having the experience, flexibility, and depth of expertise to help brokers get their deals done, and this is a team that really exemplifies that. To make sure everyone has easy access to what we're going to talk about today, I will be sending all registrants a copy of the slides, the webinar recording, and a PDF with all the questions and answers from today's session. So even if we don't get to the questions that everyone has today, we'll answer them afterwards and send them out to everybody to make sure we answer all of your questions. And if you have a question during the presentation, please use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen, and we'll either get to them live or, as I said, in our follow-up, depending on the time. Distinguished Programs is a leading national insurance program manager providing specialized insurance programs for real estate, community associations, executive lines, hotels, restaurants, fine art and collectibles, and environmental and construction professional. Our restaurant program offers umbrella, package, and cyber coverage. During this 30-minute session, we'll focus on the evolving needs of today's modern restaurants, and especially the importance of cyber coverage. So are we ready to become a go-to expert in today's modern restaurant insurance needs? All right, so let's get started. We've got a great panel today. So joining us are Heidi Strawman. Heidi, the president of our primary hospitality program, is well known in the industry. Heidi oversees the overall strategy and management of distinguished primary programs for restaurants and hotels. Heidi joined Distinguished in April 2019 with our acquisition of ProHost USA, a program administrator specializing in restaurants, which she served as president. She has an extensive background in building programs for restaurants and related risks. She's also a past president of the Target Market Program Administration Association and is currently on their advisory board. She's authored numerous articles about insuring restaurant exposures for various industry magazines, including Risk and Insurance, Insurance Journal, Agent and Broker, and Rough Notes. Heidi earned a BA in government from Cornell and an MBA from Metropolitan State University. Also joining us today is Haley Cagle. Haley joined Distinguished in January 2022 as our cyber product manager. She previously worked under a program manager for Lloyd's of London and has been in the professional liability insurance industry as a wholesale surplus line broker and underwriter for 14 years. She has specialized in cyber, tech, and miscellaneous E&O and now focuses solely on cyber. She also recently obtained her Cyber Professional Liability Practitioner, CPLP designation, which she adds to her RPLU and her ASLI designations. All right, so let's jump right in. So the first thing is a question that I have for both of you. Just to ground us a little bit, could you tell us a little bit about the restaurant program and the cyber liability coverage that you're in charge of?
Certainly, and thank you, Richie. We really pride ourselves at Distinguished in offering an end-to-end solution for restaurants. And the foundational piece of that is our restaurant package program, which provides everything from property, GL, liquor liability, EPLI in the form of an endorsement, cyber that we're going to get into shortly can be both a part of that package, or it also can be a separate policy. We have a couple options, and we'll talk in detail more about that. And then our package program also includes many restaurant-specific enhancements, lots of those bells and whistles that brokers and restaurant clients are looking for that demonstrate that this is not a generic product, but it is something that is designed specifically for restaurants. In addition, we have our monoline umbrella program. We can offer that in conjunction with our own package, and we can also write it over other carriers. We have limits available up to 140 million on the umbrella side, and that makes us also quite unique in the marketplace. And I will let Haley talk a little bit about what we offer on the cyber side.
Great, thank you, Heidi.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And great to be here today. I manage the monoline cyber liability for Distinguished. So, cyber liability is really designed to protect businesses from the cost of cyber threats and breaches. It provides insurance coverage for things like lawsuits for stolen records. You have to notify your affected parties. There's PR costs involved. That all has to do with reputational harm. And you just really got to let your visitors know that the data is safe in your hands. So cyber insurance can kick in when an attack freezes a company's systems. This includes responding to cyber interruption and lost profits due to system failure. And we'll talk about the importance of cyber coverage as we go along through these slides.
Okay, all right, thank you, Haley. So Heidi, there's always so much going on and influencing the restaurant industry. I was hoping you could let us know a little bit about what are some of the current global trends.
Absolutely, and you are totally right, Richie. It's such an interesting industry. I've been working in restaurant insurance for too many years than I really care to recall, but the evolution of the industry has been so exciting in the last few years, especially. I would say it is one of the most entrepreneurial industries out there. Restaurant owners had to be so, adapting of new ideas, especially during the pandemic, but it started before that, and I would say it's just accelerated. And that's both wonderful, and it also presents some challenges in terms of insurance. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But just to go through some of the trends that I think are the most dominant right now that we're seeing, contactless dining technology that's going across many different types of restaurants these days, and that can include robotics, both back of house and front of house, online delivery, online ordering. It's not really online delivery, it's more like online ordering for the purposes of delivery, various takeout platforms. Takeout is an area that I think everybody recognizes came to new heights and importance during the pandemic, and many restaurants that hadn't done takeout before started, and they haven't stopped. They've recognized the value of takeout as a revenue stream in their operation, and that's been vastly expanded in the last few years. CBD in food and drinks is certainly a hot trend and an interesting topic. Pop-up restaurants, which are temporary restaurant locations. A lot of brick and mortar restaurants that have their own premise also do pop-ups at different unique places. It might be they might have a pop-up in conjunction with a brewery, or it could be any place outside of their regular base of operations. It's also something that maybe somebody that doesn't have a brick and mortar restaurant of their own might do. So that can take different forms. Experimentation with entertainment. It's still a very competitive industry. Restaurants are always competing for business, and the whole entertainment area is one that a lot of restaurateurs dabble in, and it could be anything from a background piano player to live bands to axe throwing. So there's a whole range of things there, and accompanying that range is a whole range of insurance questions and potential challenges. Menu offerings for restricted or specialized diets. I think we are all getting much more accustomed when we go to a restaurant to seeing different notations on the menu. Can, vegetarian, vegan, contains nuts. I mean, it can be anything from allergies to dietary preferences. And that's something that restaurants are wanting and needing to do more and more of, as there are more people that subscribe to different dietary, either voluntarily or involuntarily, they have dietary restrictions. And then cocktail lounges and speakeasy type venues. A lot of restaurants have expanded, so perhaps they have a high-end cocktail lounge in the basement or on the rooftop. Maybe they have a old-fashioned speakeasy that's in a back room where you only know about it by word of mouth and you have to know the password. I mean, that's been a really hot trend in a lot of areas. So that's another thing that we're seeing a lot of these days from existing clients and from prospective clients.
Heidi, when you say that, a lot of things pop into my mind, but could you take us through a little bit? I mean, how do these trends impact the insurance needs of restaurants?
Yeah, it's a very critical question, and I think I would like to start my answer to that question by urging all our broker partners and prospective broker partners that are on this call to, as they're thinking about this, consider how often am I in contact with my restaurant clients? Because restaurant owners, as I mentioned, are quite entrepreneurial, and they may very well decide to make changes to their operation that they will not understand have insurance implications, and they won't talk to you about them proactively, not because they're trying to hide them from you, but just because it doesn't really occur to them that this could have insurance implications. It highlights the need for brokers to be proactive in reaching out regularly to their restaurant clients, checking in with them. Are you doing anything new? Is there anything that we should talk about? Maybe you should be checking their social media to see what they're up to, because a lot of times that's where it's going to show up first, that they're trying something new. So having said that, things to watch out for, and I think brokers will understand this, and it's a matter of educating your clients about it. Most insurers have a cannabis exclusion on their policy. So if you have a client that is providing food or drink that is CBD enhanced, you're going to need to discuss that with them and perhaps look for some additional coverage for them outside of a traditional package policy. Those pop-up restaurants are another situation where an exclusion may apply depending on the policy you have in place, but a lot of companies use the designated premise endorsement, and their coverage is going to be limited to the premise that is identified on the policy. So if they decide, oh, let's dabble in some off-site catering, and they have that exclusion on their policy, they may not have coverage. Or if they decide to do a pop-up. So those are a couple examples. It may turn out that based on something that's newly added, they may not have adequate limits to cover, whether it's new equipment that they've added, maybe they've invested in some robotics. I mean, that can be quite expensive. So you need to, revisit their various limits on their policy. Depending on what they've added, they may be in jeopardy of being canceled or non-renewed. I mean, their carriers have their underwriting guidelines, and if they say no entertainment and all of a sudden there's axe throwing, they're probably not going to want to stay on that risk. I know that's an extreme example, but it happens, I mean, what could go wrong? Liquor, axes, I don't see a problem with it, but some people do. So also just the example of the high-end cocktail lounge, the speakeasy, that may bring in more sales and it may enhance profitability, but it may also increase your liquor sales versus food sales to the point where you are not an acceptable account anymore for some restaurant markets. Maybe you become considered more of a bar tavern risk. So those are some of the areas I think where these insurance issues may develop, and the important thing is communicate between restaurant client, broker, and your underwriter.
All right, thank you. That's very interesting. Haley, I'm going to ask you a question. And some of it was spurred on by what Heidi was talking about, but whether they want it or not, technology is increasingly becoming part of the day-to-day in restaurants. What are some of the current cyber threats that modern restaurants are facing, and how can they proactively address or overcome these challenges?
Yeah, so going off of what Heidi said, modern restaurants, they're changing so quickly. There's so much more new technology that's being used today that wasn't even used, in the last few years. It's growing so rapidly. The security and the training for some of these features is still catching up. And this just provides so many more opportunities for these bad actors to come in and try to attack our systems. Especially in the pandemic, we saw, so much more of the contactless payment methods, mobile apps, tabletop payment systems, just so many different ways to take, credit cards, and just another way for a bad actor to come in. Social engineering is evolving to bypass MFA which is multi-factor authentication. Phishing schemes, they're getting smarter here as well. It's no longer just email. We have to look out for calls now. That's called phishing. And I'm sure everybody's gotten their text messages lately over the holidays. We're looking at text messages too. That's called smishing. So they want you to click on these bad links, and then that's how they get your information. Attacks on the third-party vendors affect restaurants especially. So just to give you some idea of what's going on out there, I mean, this is very recent. There was a very large ransomware attack that affected a point of sale vendor that provides financial services from restaurants. And over 100,000 restaurants use this particular processor. Some of these restaurants, they couldn't accept payments, they couldn't accept their loyalty or gift cards. Some of them couldn't even process their payroll or access their inventory systems. So I mean, it really, attack on a third-party vendor can, it really, really hurts a restaurant, especially a small restaurant. So what can we do? What can we do about it? Employee training is key. We have to keep current on phishing training and proper data handling. Securing our network is super important. Strong passwords, firewalls, encrypting and backing up our data. And when we're using third-party vendors, we want to make sure the point-of-sale vendor is using the best cyber practices and that your contract with your vendors includes security requirements. And, with all of that, a cyber attack can still happen. So even with your best security practices, they still occur. So obtaining a cyber policy that's comprehensive is essential. You need coverage for social engineering, ransomware, network liability, PCI cost, business interruption. There's just, there's so many different aspects of cyber, and we'll go into a little bit more of these in a later slide.
Okay, but Haley, many restaurants and restaurant owners still consider cyber coverage optional. How risky is it for a restaurant to self-insure for cyber?
Yeah, it's very, very risky to self-insure, especially for a small restaurant. Especially like I talked about earlier, post-pandemic, we're seeing more and more businesses report cyber attacks and data breaches. So, businesses like restaurants, hotels, a lot of the hospitality, we're having a large number of clients. They process payments through online portals with credit and debit cards. And you're looking at a $3 million average cost of a claim for the hospitality industry for a data breach. You may think, maybe my claim won't be that much. But even if it's not that much, you're still spending tens of thousands of dollars. You have to upgrade your security system. All the business you lose when you cannot accept your payments. So a good cyber insurance package can really help mitigate these risks and cover the cost of some of these attacks.
So given what you just talked about, what kind of program have we put together Distinguish to offer brokers to sell to the customers, that are essential for restaurants?
Yeah, so we offer coverage through Beasley, the monoline product, and there's so many variations in the cyber market, and what's covered and what's not. I feel like we provide a very comprehensive policy. Beasley's an extremely well-known name in cyber insurance. So first of all, notifications are very important, and you want to note that we have notification expenses outside the limit. And when you're looking at an average cost of a record for about $150 per record, that really adds up considering how many, payment methods that, restaurants are taking in every day. You've got your breach response costs, your forensic PR, crisis management. All this has to do with, reputational harm, repairing your reputation if something happens, and also figuring out how the breach started. You've got ransomware costs. Or cyber extortion. I know that's a hot topic out there right now, ransomware for sure. You want to make sure we've got, business interruption, and that business interruption also includes dependent business interruption. So that would be like if it affects your third-party vendors. We've got data network liability. Then we've got penalties for things like regulatory and PCI liability and cost, payment card liability and cost. Media liability if you have a website you're advertising on. And then certain types of fraud also covered, funds transfer, telephone, fraudulent instruction, which we're seeing a lot more of recently. And finally, there's a supplement for criminal reward. So, and I think, even more importantly, in the event of a cyber attack, that policyholders also have access to a breach response team. And that's really going to help them pinpoint where the system has been compromised. It's going to, give these businesses a 24/7 hotline to where they can, contact somebody if they think a cyber event's occurred. So, when you're a restaurant manager and you're panicking and, you think you've got a breach, you contact the breach response team, and they're really your first responders. They help you every step of the way.
All right. I just want to dig into a little bit more. So to the extent that you haven't covered it, talking about the coverages, a big question for a lot of restaurants, they have for the brokers, what is the restaurant required to do or pay if there's a breach?
Right. Yeah. So I won't, we're running a little bit low on time, so I won't spend too much here, but I will say, it's a lot of stuff. I mean, you can look and, just our bullet points right here. I mean, they've got to figure out how it happened. We talked about notifications. They've got to notify regulatories. They've got to notify their clients, their customers, that they've had a breach. There's fines and penalties if you happen to, not be in compliance with your certain state laws or federal laws. You have to offer credit monitoring. Again, public relations, something to repair your reputation. Customer support. You have to help your customers. There's, assisting those that are affected by the breach. You've got to pay your premiums if you do have cyber insurance in place. Business interruption cost is huge, especially for restaurants when you can't accept, bookings, you can't accept payments. You're losing so much business. Third-party liability. And you've got to train your team to improve your cybersecurity awareness. So yeah, I mean, our cyber liability coverage protects establishments in the event of a data breach or other cyber attack. So a lot of this is going to be covered. So
okay, and what's the best way for a broker to successfully sell cyber liability insurance?
Yeah, so selling cyber can be a little tricky. It's not, technology is not everybody's first go-to here. It can be a little less obvious. It's important to not just sell the insurance, but explain what the risks are and how they can threaten your client's business. So data is a super important tool to help make the case and convince your clients. So we talked about it earlier. The average breach claim for the hospitality industry is $3 million, and the average cost for a stolen record is $150. I mean, it really starts adding up. Second, you need to educate your clients on the common risk associated with their business and the responsibilities during a breach. You kind of, look at the last slide and just, that long list that we had. That's all the things that a restaurant's going to have to do or be responsible for paying in the event of a breach. Many restaurants, especially, small restaurants, they can't handle this type of loss on their own. And finally, giving them real life samples, something that they can, really latch on to. There's that point of sale vendor ransomware attack we discussed earlier on in the presentation. We're seeing more attacks on mobile apps and websites. Another recent claim that just, not with us, but another recent attack that occurred. It was a large chain restaurant where personal information was stolen and was being sold on the black market through their mobile app. So it's really interesting to see, how these attackers, they just keep coming through different avenues. And then I would say finally, payment card fraud is so important for restaurants due to the large amount of credit card payments being accepted. So you can see, the bad actors are coming after these restaurants from all sides.
So, I understand how a large restaurant could see the need for this, but do small restaurants also need this kind of coverage?
Yes. Small restaurants, it may even be more important. Cyber criminals, they don't care that you're a small restaurant. It's a game of numbers for them, how many targets they can go after. Small restaurants are even more dependent on third-party applications and other vendors. Small restaurant owners are just not investing the time and the money in cybersecurity, and that really makes them a prime target, an easy target. There was one study done by Barracuda Networks that showed that small businesses will actually experience 350% more social engineering attacks than a larger business. Ransomware attacks are also on the rise because these attackers know that they have weaker web security. So, small businesses are just not equipped to deal with the effects of a cyber attack even in the first weeks. If, combined with the lost profits and data, possible fines and penalties on top of that, the harm to the reputation, few restaurants can really recover from it. Data shows that 60% of small businesses go out of business within 6 months of a data breach.
Wow. That's a figure. Wow. I'm going to ask a broader question now, because we're talking specifically about restaurants. Heidi, how does Distinguished customize insurance solutions across all lines of business? Is it everything for everybody, or how do we do it?
I'm going to answer that question, but I want to add one thing to what Haley was just talking about on the subject of selling cyber. And that is my observation, and this is a bit of a challenge that I'm going to pose to the brokers that are on this call, is one thing I observe from proposals that we see that, where we get copies of the proposals that brokers are presenting to their insureds, there are still way too many that are showing cyber in that optional section on the proposal. And I think brokers need to change that conversation. This should not be in your optional coverage section. It really should be in the you need to have this section of your proposal. That's my advice. I think that it changes the mindset when you present it that way, because after you look at these risks that we've been talking about, it's really hard to think of it as something that should be optional. So I just wanted to put that little plug in there. How does Distinguished customize insurance solutions across all lines of business? One of the ways we do this is we make it easy for the broker, because you have one point of contact for all these different coverages. Cyber is, Haley is our expert on that. She is working directly with our restaurant core underwriting team. And when a broker sends us a restaurant submission, it's going to get handled by one underwriter, and they're going to be dealing with that one person, and that is going to be a very seasoned restaurant underwriter. All they do all day is underwrite restaurants. They're not a generalist. They're not trying to keep up to date on a whole bunch of different industries. They're all about restaurants, and they understand the difference between a large fine dining restaurant and a fast casual restaurant, a larger entity, a smaller entity, different coverage needs, depending on if they're a tenant or a building owner, where they're located. There's all kinds of different variables. We're doing business all across the country with all different types of restaurants. And that's what allows us to bring that expertise to bear on each account that you send us.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Heidi. So I hate to say it, because it's been a great conversation. We're actually already running out of time for our half-hour time slot. So I want to remind everybody that we are going to send out, we gathered some frequently asked questions ahead of time. We had a lot of people submit questions to us. And so we'll be talking about in the package that we'll send you after this, ghost kitchens, who our partners are, how you submit business. Everyone who's been on this webinar will get a PDF, a transcript of this, and a link to the video. And so I'd just like to thank everybody who has tuned in. Any questions that have been submitted, we'll make sure to answer those also and send them out. And especially, I'd like to thank Heidi and Kate and Haley for spending so much time with us today talking about this. They're always available to speak to broker partners to help you sell through to your customers. Any final words that you'd like to say on the topic, Heidi or Haley?
I just want to thank all the brokers that joined us today. We have so many great broker partners. I know a lot of them are on this call. I'm sure there's some that haven't done business with us, and I hope this has encouraged you to give us a try. We love to get to know new brokers and work to help solve some of your problems and challenges, perhaps with some of your restaurant clients. So we'd love to hear from you.
All right, any final words of advice, Haley?
Just, cyber insurance, so important, even for small restaurants. And, I'd love to, discuss, cyber insurance with you guys. You can give me a call, or you can also send me an email. I'd be happy to help set you up with some highlight sheets, whatever you need to help you sell the cyber.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Heidi and Haley. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As you can see, it's a topic with there's just so many facets to it, and we'd love to talk to you further about it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.